I had just gone back to work. I had mom guilt for so long about going back to work, and I finally had been going to work for about a month. And so my sister came to watch the kids for me. I got a call at work that they had been in a wreck. The road was backed up. There were helicopters and there were fire trucks and ambulances everywhere. And I just parked my car on the side of the road and I started running. And when I got up there, um, there were three ambulances, and I found out that all three of my daughters were in them. They told me that they didn't think one of my daughters was going to make it um, to Nashville, but they wouldn't tell me which one. I kept asking, and they wouldn't tell me which one. It didn't matter, but I needed to know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but they let me see Nora, my middle daughter, and she had a concussion, and so she was in and out of sleep. But I did get to see her, and I talked to her until the helicopter got there to take her and Hannah to Nashville. Then I rode. I don't even remember who I rode with, honestly, but I rode with somebody to the local hospital to be with Jude. Altogether, she died 12 times, but she died 3 times in that hospital, and me and her dad had to see that once. They got Jude stabilized, and we took her to. We ended up. I got to fly with her in the helicopter to Nashville, um, where Hannah was already in surgery. She had she had a traumatic brain injury. She had broken her cheekbone, her jawbone, and her eye socket. She had broken her back and her neck. And then she also had just from where she had the broken bones, she had to have the whole left side of her face reconstructed. And then Nora had to have a bowel resection. She had the worst of the three girls, but they all did have to have bowel resections. And then she ended up having to have surgery. She broke her neck as well, and she had to have surgery where they took a graft from her rib and then put it in there. And then Jude, they I can't even tell you how many surgeries she went through because I couldn't keep track at the time. But um, after 4 days in there, she was declared brain dead. It was like boom, boom, boom. Here's Jude's room, here's Hannah's room, here's Nora's room, all lined up. So we had to like orchestrate it with parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins and who would stay with who and who was because I have a huge Italian family and they will not leave. They did not leave the entire time we were in the hospital.
Was it too much, or were you glad to have that many people around, or did you just need some space?
At first, before we had gotten to Nashville with Jude, it was overwhelming and I just wanted everyone to leave me alone. Then when we got to the hospital here, it was actually, or in Nashville, it was really helpful to have so many people going, and running errands and getting things that we might need and helping out.
When they told you that she was brain dead,
Mm-hmm.
what was that what was that experience like for you?
I didn't want to believe it. I don't think any of us wanted to believe it. I think the only person who really understood it in the moment was Jude's dad. He was in there when they called it, and I was asleep. We would, take shifts sleeping for like an hour or two. Um, and he was in there when that happened. So I think he was the only one that really saw it for what it was until they did the final test where they called it and, ended up, taking her off life support. He made it feel like we didn't have an option. We couldn't choose to hold on for longer. It is what it is. And so
Yeah.
that's confusing looking back at now because I I'm not sure if that was done right. I feel like if I had the option, if I'd been told I had the option, I would have kept her on for longer.
It's hard to let go even when there doesn't seem to be any chance, right? Like scientifically speaking, I
Yeah,
imagine I would have been like, okay, well, I understand why we're saying
right.
that this is this, but at the same time as a mom, like you're how could you ever be ready
Right.
to let go? That's
Right.
what was the relationship like with your sister following this experience?
I think me and my sister have never been closer than we are now. She before the wreck and even after the wreck, she is a preschool teacher and she's trained in CPR. So she actually kept Jude alive until the ambulance got there. So if she had not done that, and I'll be forever grateful for her. I paid for her wedding and everything because of this. But
Did you?
she kept Jude alive long enough for us to be able to say goodbye.
Was there a part of you that was holding on to guilt over this experience?
So I blame myself. I blame myself about 50-50, the guy that hit my sister's car and then me, because my girls were not in car seats. They were 5, 7, and 9, and my 5-year-old was about the size of an 8-year-old. I was not up to date on the car seat laws because they had just changed. Maybe I think I found out that it was 6 months, but it may have been 4 or 5 months before the wreck. Um, and so like the weight requirements had changed, and I wasn't up to date on those. And so none of them were in booster seats, car seats, or anything like that. They just had the regular lap belt. And so had they had those, no matter, how the wreck had gone, I think that they would have all survived it. I don't think that we would have even had any severe injuries.
That's a hard thing to process. And you don't know,
Mhm.
right? Like you don't know for sure that that would have made a world of difference or not. So, what does that look like for you letting go of that guilt?
It's very hard. It has taken a lot of talking about it and being open and honest about it, to start to forgive myself. I still haven't fully. I don't know that I ever will fully, um, but I know that at least now I can be a voice for people who thought that, like me, that would never happen. And I hate to say that because it's so cliche that you think you never think it'll happen to you, but I didn't. That wasn't going to happen to me, and I would be able to protect my kids if something would happen, but I wasn't there, and then I didn't protect them. So,
That's really such an important message because, especially younger viewers,
mhm.
right? Like, I feel in anything in life, we have this, a lot of times we have this attitude until something big happens.
Yeah,
We all have that attitude of, well, I hate that that happens to anyone, right? But that wouldn't happen here.
right.
And it's such an eye-opening. I mean, obviously, you don't want this experience to happen to anyone, but it's such an eye-opening in any situation where you totally lose control, right? 2020 has kind of taught us that a little bit, that
Right.
everything can be ripped away from you in a moment,
Mhm.
and our life is more fragile, and it can be changed in an instant. And this is one of those experiences. So, like, I don't feel like it's stupid to think you didn't think that would happen to you. I think we all think that way until it does, unfortunately, right? One of those awkward questions that people probably don't like to ask, but I feel like this is an important part of the stress of like just lost a child
Mhm.
and you're trying to grieve and you have 3 kids in the hospital
Mhm.
with tons of surgeries. I'm assuming you had quite a hefty financial bill for all of this.
Yeah. We were lucky enough that my cousin set up a GoFundMe. And so we raised quite a bit of money and we were able to get a lawyer. The medical bills ended up being upwards near somewhere near like 5 million. Yeah. And they ended up talking them down enough to where they were actually able to pay it with the money that they got, just from suing the insurance companies. So that was totally covered. But in the beginning there, we were horrified, horrified.
Come on. Like you just lost a child
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to like what does life look like to you now, and like you're trying to process it all, and I'm sure part of you is grieving and part of you is also in shock and denial, and
Yeah.
then you have somebody be like, by the way, you owe us $5 million.
Yeah.
Good job, by the way, because you were in such a bad place,
Mhm.
and probably I can't believe you found the strength to advocate for yourself in a situation like that. I would have just been way too much of a mess to be able to figure out, like, we got to get a lawyer and we're
Yeah.
going to do that. Like, I just don't think my head would have been on straight enough to process that.
Mine wasn't until my husband and then my daughter's dad. They both started coming at me with, we gotta get this problem solved. We gotta get this guy in jail, or we've got to get a lawyer, And they started coming out of the woodworks with TV lawyers, and I'm like, we're not doing that. So I had to get on the ball,
Yeah, well, us ladies are good at doing that though under
aren't
pressure,
we?
I feel like,
Yeah,
right?
for sure. Mm-hmm.
It's crazy how much we're like, no,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to take care of this the right way. So, can you explain a little bit about what happened in the accident itself? Who is this person that you were talking about with jail? And
Yeah. I won't say his name, obviously. I wouldn't do that. But there's this man, and he was pulling out of this side road, and my sister was coming this way, so she was heading straight, and then he was coming out of a side road, and he had a utility trailer on the back of his truck for like a lawnmower, but there was nothing on it. And he didn't have the pins or chains on it like are legally required, and so it popped off when he turned out. A minivan hit the trailer and then shoved the trailer down the driver's side of my sister's car. I couldn't point fingers. The boys were doing it all they wanted, the dads were, but I couldn't do it myself for obvious reasons. So
I don't, I mean, I don't even know if I would say for obvious reasons, because at the end of the day, the accident happened because of that situation, right?
yeah.
So you're a very big person
Yeah.
and you need to give yourself credit for that, because not everybody would respond that way. And that's an important thing for people to hear and to try and learn from, because the anger that you could project on that person
Mhm.
is valid. It is a valid amount of anger, but is it going to help you? Is it going to help you grieve? Is it going to help you heal?
Right.
Right. And I mean, clearly the answer to that is no. And forgiveness can be so hard,
Mhm.
right? And letting things go can be so hard. But the only way you get to heal yourself is to let go of those feelings. We can't move on from an experience
Mhm.
if we're too busy holding on to all this anger and hate.
Right.
So, I mean, how do you feel like you've been able to forgive this person?
Um, I feel like I've forgiven him more than I've forgiven myself.
Like, wow, isn't that a true statement for like basically anything? I mean, this is such a like higher level of that, but the normal amount of mom guilt we had, like you said at the beginning, you were feeling guilty about going back to work in general. I think that just allowing yourself to know that, right? Just allowing yourself to be like, I have this level of guilt and I need to forgive myself, but it's going to take time. And right now I'm not ready to. And that's okay.
Yep.
Right. I hope you do, though. I really hope you do let go of that and forgive yourself. I know this about you, and we haven't talked about it. So I know that you do not consider yourself a Christian,
Right.
correct?
Correct.
So can you talk to me a little bit about somebody who does not believe in heaven? What does the afterlife for your daughter look like to you?
So I don't have to believe in heaven to believe that she is still with me and she is happy and she is free. Um, I like to find her within myself, and that's kind of like my go-to answer for how do I cope. I like to find her within myself, and that means embracing the parts of me that she took on during her life, the parts of me that made her who she was. I like to embrace those now. I feel like she's not gone, even though she is.
I have to say, I think you're doing something bigger than you realize you're doing with this. And that's, you're teaching your children that it's okay to have pain and be sad and to take time for yourself to heal, right? Like, I'll cry. But in a situation like what you're going through, it's so important that your children see that and think to themselves, Mom is hurting because
Mhm,
she's a human and she has feelings and her feelings are valid. And life is not sunshine and roses.
mhm.
There is pain and there is heartbreak. It's so good that you're allowing them to grieve in their way and understand the fact that, yes, I lost my child, but they also lost their sister and they need that space too, right? You don't ever know exactly what's all being processed there, but
They have a lot of feelings about it themselves. I know that my middle daughter Nora, she I guess so in the car wreck she was in the middle and she was only yeah she was still 7 when she said this to me. She said that she should be the one that died because Jude was in the middle first and she made her switch.
oh God.
Mhm.
That's going to be really hard for her to process, right? I'm glad that she felt safe enough to talk to you about that in that age range and development here. And the fact that she felt safe enough, though, right, to tell you that because at 7, like like they probably felt like I should be arrested. Like what, like that's right. How they take it on is like what I did is really, really wrong, but what they did is like a normal thing. But the fact that what the outcome of it was like that's such a heavy load, and I'm so glad she let it off a little bit by talking to you about it. Sorry, I'm gonna make you cry. I'm not trying to make you cry. Sorry. But that's such a heavy load for her to hold on to. And the fact that you've created such a good environment where she can talk to you about that is really important. You should be proud of yourself for that. Living life after such a loss like that, do you have moments on your good days where you ever feel guilty for having a good day?
I do feel guilty every now and then I just have to like kind of remind myself that just because my daughter died doesn't mean that I died. And I am so afraid that people aren't going to realize that. Um, I still have a family to take care of, and I still have friends and a life and a career and all these things that I have to do. And I can't continue to do those if I just let myself succumb to the depression that I really would sometimes like to succumb to.
When you're having a good day and you're laughing and having fun, but people know the history and have seen some of your other videos, do they come at you and try to make you feel guilty?
Yes, always. I always have people coming at me to make me feel guilty about trying to be happy. I made videos talking about what happened to my daughters because I wanted people to first of all, my number one thing is I don't want anyone to make the same mistake that I made and I don't want people to be naive and lose a child because of it like I did. And then secondly, I want my daughter to be remembered. And that's so important. That's my thing is that as long as I'm here, she'll be remembered by everyone. So
On a bad day, how bad can it get?
I wasn't thinking about hurting myself specifically, but I was starting to think about how my kids would be perfectly fine. My oldest daughter would not have suffered her brain injury and she would be perfectly the way that she was before and she wouldn't have to go through all these struggles that she's facing now. And my middle daughter would have her little sister and just everything would be better if I weren't here. I wasn't making plans, but I truly was believing that things would be better off without me, and it was going to get that way if I didn't get help. I think that having a support system is the most important thing that you can do, and I think it's also worth noting that when you start to feel your lowest, it's so easy to just push everything away and not ask for help. But the thing that people need to know who have people in their life who are experiencing loss or serious depression and things like that is that you just have to help. You need to find out what they need and you just need to do it. Don't ask them what they need, just find out and do it.
It can be very hard to ask for help because we are in that mindset of it's our job to be strong. And it's our job to protect and to be the ones that fixes problems.
We're the ones who take care of the things. We're not the ones that are taken care of.
Yeah. Did the opposite happen where someone thought they were in some way being helpful, but you were like, wow, this is the least helpful, hurtful thing someone's done yet?
The least helpful thing is something that someone said to me, and it's been said to me so many times, actually, at the moment, and then up until now, people have said things like, um, losing her was part of God's plan, or God needed another angel. And I'm not offended by that because I'm not religious. It has nothing to do with that. It's the fact that I really believe that nothing as good as her life can come of her death. And I just don't understand how anyone else could believe that.
Do some bad things have to happen for good things to come out of them?
Absolutely.
Yes. That is a much better phrase.
Mhm.
Sometimes bad things happen so something good can.
Mhm.
But that does not mean that something great will come out of you having to lose your child. Absolutely not. That doesn't have to mean that,
Mhm.
nor would you want it to,
No.
right? Wouldn't you be like, I don't give a shit what great thing happens to anybody else or the whole entire world. I want my daughter.
Yep. That's
And
exactly it.
that's a fair, valid statement.
Mhm.
Wow. I hope I hope that people that hear this that haven't thought about that really take time to take that in, because at some point somebody they care about is going to lose somebody they love.
Yeah.
And something that people say that just sounds like you're supposed to say it can be incredibly hurtful.
Yeah. I think that if you are trying to find the words to say, just let them know that you know there are none. Let them know there's nothing you can say to make it better. And that's honestly what I appreciate the most.
Yeah. Right. Katie, I'm so glad that you took time to open up and share your story with us today. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you for having me.
If you want to learn more about Katie's story, you can go to her blog. It's thebookofjudeblog.com. Is that correct, Katie?
Yes.
And she talks there all about her story with loss of a child.